If something was slowly harming you, but it looked beautiful, felt exciting, and everyone around you kept smiling, how long would it take before you trusted the glow more than your own body? There was a time when some young women sat in a factory painting watch dials with radium, this strange luminous substance that made time visible in the dark. They were told it was harmless, even sophisticated. To get a fine point on their brushes, they shaped them with their lips over and over every day. It became routine, normal, almost elegant in its precision. But in the very same building, scientists handled that material with gloves, shields, and tongs. Two realities coexisting under one roof. One protected, the other reassured. And what matters here isn't just that they didn't know, it's that the explanation they were given felt more stable than the evidence their bodies would eventually produce.
There's something deeper going on in a situation like that. It's what you might call coherent exposure. When something is presented in a way that feels emotionally consistent and reassuring, the mind accepts it before it really examines it. Not out of carelessness, but because you're wired to prefer stability. Those workers weren't just handling radium, they were living inside a story about it, a story that felt modern, safe, even a little magical. And when that story is repeated often enough, supported by authority, and reflected back by everyone around you, trust forms early. Once that trust is in place, contradiction doesn't break it. It gets absorbed, softened, and explained away.
You can see how powerful that was in the way they started wearing the glow, not just on watches, but on their clothes, their skin, even their teeth when they went out at night. It became something playful, something social. And that detail matters because it shows how completely the danger lost its edge. It didn't feel threatening, it felt like a participation, like a belonging. And when something harmful is wrapped in that kind of atmosphere, your internal warning system doesn't respond the way you expect. It doesn't shout at you, it barely whispers. A slight discomfort, a flicker of unease, something small that doesn't quite fit, but those signals are easy to ignore when everything else still feels coherent.
Repetition is what seals it. The first time you do something, it stands out. The 10th time, it feels familiar. After that, it becomes unquestioned. So when the first symptoms appeared, jaw pain, fatigue, things not quite right, they didn't immediately break the belief. They were small enough to explain away. People told themselves it was nothing, just tiredness, just coincidence. That's how the mind preserves the larger story. It trims out the small contradictions so the overall picture can stay intact. Not because people are foolish, but because the alternative, breaking the story, feels far more disruptive.
The body, though, doesn't need a story. It registers what's happening long before identity catches up. It doesn't wait for permission or consensus, it simply reacts. But identity is built differently. It's slower, shaped by trust and repetition and shared understanding. So you end up with this quiet split. The body is signaling that something is wrong, while identity is still aligned with the idea that everything is perfectly fine. And in that space between the two, behaviour continues. You keep doing the thing, even as something deeper starts to question it.
What's striking is the behavior doesn't stop the moment that the belief weakens. You don't need full conviction to keep participating. You just need enough coherence to stay where you are. Doubt doesn't arrive all at once. It shows up in fragments, small and private. But the structure around you, the authority, the routine, the shared behavior, remains steady. So even as belief begins to crack, participation carries on. That's the part people underestimate. You can feel something is off and still continue because stepping outside the system feels harder than staying inside it.
Eventually, though, the evidence becomes harder to ignore. Pain that doesn't go away, patterns that don't fit the explanation anymore. And even then, the explanation doesn't vanish, it shifts. New reassurances appear, new reasons are offered, and the system adjusts just enough to keep going. That's the unsettling part. It doesn't need to be true to survive, it just needs to remain believable enough.
And this isn't something locked in the past. The same pattern shows up now, just in more refined forms. Modern systems are better at creating that sense of coherence. The language is smoother, the presentation's more polished, and the reassurance more convincing. But the mechanism is identical. When something feels right, looks right, and is repeated by authority, it lowers your guard before you even realize that you had one. Small contradictions don't feel like warnings. They feel like background noise, and they get filtered out.
Most people have felt that moment. Something doesn't sit right, but it's hard to explain why. It's a quiet discomfort that doesn't match the confidence of what you're being told. And instead of stopping, you adjust. You tell yourself it's fine. You stay with the explanation because it's easier than stepping away from it. That isn't a weakness. That's actually how coherence works. But once you start to notice it, you begin to see where reassurance and reality stop lining up.
And noticing that gap early changes everything. You don't need a dramatic breakdown or undeniable proof. You don't need everything to collapse before you respond. You just need to stop automatically trusting authority to interpret reality for you. Because authority by nature absorbs and reshapes evidence. It doesn't always reveal it. If you're waiting for the system to confirm something is wrong, you're already too far inside it. The body tends to register things first, quietly, without explanation, but with a kind of honesty that's hard to fake.
And that's why this story lingers, because at the center of it is something simple and difficult to ignore. They were glowing, and the glow felt like safety. It felt like progress, like something really beautiful. And all the while, something underneath was breaking down. The danger wasn't just the harm itself, it was how convincing it felt while it was happening.
So the real question isn't whether systems can fail. They can. The question is whether you can recognize the moment when the explanation feels better than the evidence. When the story holds you steady but quietly pulls you away from what's real. Those moments are usually small and easy to dismiss, but they're also the only points where you can still see clearly and change your actions before repetition locks everything in. Because once you see it, you understand something most people miss. The glow made the wound feel safe.
If something in this stayed with you, something subtle you felt before but maybe never quite named, then stay with us. These are the kinds of conversations that only deepen over time, and we're building this space for people who are willing to look a little closer at what most overlook. So if that's you, take a moment to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who's ready for it too. And if you want to catch these as they arrive, you can ring the bell. We'll be here continuing to explore what sits just beneath the surface. So until next time, think differently, dream boldly, and create consciously.